back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow. It's so good to see my next guest again. It's been way too long. Kymone Freeman is many things. He's a friend. He's a brother of mine. He is an author. He's an activist. He's a creator. He's a playwright. He's a co-owner of We Act Radio, where this show is broadcast out of. And he's now the author of a new novel entitled Nineveh. You remember, well, some of you may remember Nineveh from the Bible. The word is spelled Nineveh, Nineveh, a conflict over water, and it was published on World Water Day 2023, which was March 22nd. So it's a brand new book. First of all, Kymone Freeman, welcome back to the Zero Hour.
Thank you. It's always an honor to be with you. Always a pleasure. You're doing fantastic work.
Well, thank you. You too. And so World Water, is it World Water Day, World Water Week? What was the deal now with that, first of all?
Well, March 22nd is officially World Water Day, but the UN is holding conferences on world water all week. So now it's World Water Week. So the issue is growing. The crisis is growing. So it went from a day to the week now.
You know, I'm just going to make this observation that if you're thirsty and they hold a conference about water, you're still thirsty. So, right, there's got to be some action too. So let's hope there'll be some action coming out of this and some consciousness, awareness about it, which is where your book comes in. So, why don't you just briefly describe your novel to us, which was just published?
Yes, it was published by Strong Arm Press, and I'm honored to be their first literary reality fiction work accepted on that platform, because without them, we wouldn't have gotten this far. But it's basically a conflict over water set in the future where water's been priced beyond affordability of the masses, forcing them to collect rainwater, which constitutes a new contraband. It's run by the Global Water Corporation. Polar ice caps have melted. Some cities have submerged. Some new cities have emerged. And Nineveh is one of those cities that emerged. And the resistance that dare defy the system and collection of that rainwater is challenging the Global Water Corporation. And I think it's a captivating story, an entertaining story, and a cautionary tale.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been reading the book and I've been thinking to myself, I never read any fiction from you before, all these years that I've known you. And I've been thinking, damn, Kymone wrote a good book here. This is like, I'm into this book. It's a very gripping book. It's a very, how do I say this? It's a vivid world, right? I can picture this world as, both as something that might come to pass and as a kind of metaphor for the world we live in today as well, where you can take water itself as a critical issue, but you can take all the things that life depends on and say that they're controlled by corporations that also control the political power. You know what I'm driving at?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is my pandemic baby. So this is one of the benefits of a crisis, because I had the opportunity to sit down for 2 years like everybody else. I tell people all the time, the pandemic is the only time the poor people get a vacation. And this was a writer's dream, when I had to had the time and the wherewithal and the bandwidth to think. And this is what a result of having time on your hands well spent and put use. But it's a melancholy feeling because, as I said off air, this is my greatest work to date. I have the highest level of confidence in the quality of this work, but it's talking about a crisis that I have trouble celebrating. We need to realize that we don't have to look around the world to find a water crisis. We can just analyze our lives. We're still fairly young men, RJ, but we're old enough to remember that when we was kids, if somebody asked us to buy a bottle of water, we'd have looked at them like they was crazy.
Right.
But here we are. I was at a Wizards basketball game a few weeks ago, and they're charging $6.15 for a 16-ounce bottle of water. Now, I drive an electric car, but I understand gas is less than $4 a gallon. So you're paying less than $4 for a gallon of gas, and I paid $6.15 for 16 ounces. So they are now charging more for water than they are doing for gas today in this country. And I cannot, I would be remiss if I don't point out one of the most egregious aspects of what corporations controlling human resource such as water. We all know about Flint, Michigan. We all know about the water crisis that also took place in Detroit, Michigan, where exorbitant water bills led to a lot of people getting their water cut off. And when that happens, Child Protection Services come and take your kids. So those are water refugees right here in the States. So what they don't mention is that Nestle, we know them for chocolate, but their biggest money making is water. They have the audacity to pay Michigan $200 a year for the right to pump 1 million gallons of water out of the Great Lakes a day. Now, if you pull out a map, Flint, Michigan and Detroit, Michigan are a short drive to the largest fresh body lake on the planet, the Great Lakes. How can they possibly have an issue with water if there wasn't some theft and robbery and corruption taking place? So that's what's happening today, and it's going to get worse when climate change causes that some places will have too much water and some places will not have enough.
And we're seeing that now, right? We're seeing water rising in places like Miami. We're seeing we're starting to get used to flooding, and we shouldn't get used to it, by the way, because I think we should recognize that it is an apocalypse beginning. But we're seeing flooding all over the world. We're seeing flooding, horrific flooding in Pakistan and other parts of the world. And yet, as you say, this deprivation, this desertification in other places. And we see that, even the U.S. military, not necessarily the most enlightened organization on the planet, was aware enough to point out that climate change and the loss of water resources has contributed to wars of the past few decades and will contribute to more in the decades to come. So, really, when it comes to just looking around you, there's no question but that some places are being flooded, some places are being deprived, and human beings are being turned against one another violently because of water, which is what your book is about. Absolutely. And I just seen this incredible documentary called The Grab. I urge your listeners to check it out. The Grab, it was featured here in Washington, D.C. at the D.C. Environmental Film Festival. And I saw a screening at Georgetown University. And they talk about conflicts over food and water that's taking place right now. We've been talking about the 20th anniversary of the Iraq invasion, because we don't want to justify by even calling it a war. But in that Iraq invasion, we know about how the mercenaries Blackwater made a killing. Blackwater, right. Right. Eric Prince is no longer in the mercenary business per se, but what is he doing now? He's in Africa. And what is he doing? He's guarding people that come in to steal people's land so they can control food and water. He's providing his services for them. Kamala Harris, the vice president, was on record in this film. I still got to find this clip, but she said it in the film that the next war will be over water. The vice president said this. And if you look at Arizona, so that you don't think it's just a black problem or a people of color problem, Arizona, the last time I checked, is a very red state, and their wells are running dry because corporations are draining them. And what we people understand is that you can't negotiate with Mother Nature. It doesn't respect boundaries or property rights or any of that. If I plug a straw into the ground like George Bush is going to do in the land that he bought in South America to access one of the largest aquifers, underground water source on the planet, it's going to suck it dry. It doesn't matter where you are on that land. When your well runs dry, that's it. And what we need to understand is that at some point, as Martin Luther King said, we're going to have a revolution of values, because if housing is not a human right, and healthcare is not a human right, and water is not a human right, then that means that the Supreme Court was correct, that free money is free speech, and without it, you don't have a right to exist. So we're going to have a coming to Jesus moment, as my grandmother would say, about these issues. And I think it's inevitable because the current situation is untenable. Well, I'm sure grandmother believed that Jesus walked on water too, right?
Yes, she did.
Can't do that if there's no water.
Yeah, and some of them think that Obama did too, but that's another conversation.
Right. And if you've ever gone in California, if you've ever driven down to San Diego and then down through into Mexico, you see right away that everything is green. The hills are green and lush and beautiful. You cross into Mexico, brown and dry. That's not an act of nature. That's in a part of the world with limited water. Pure, unadulterated political and military power means that the water is diverted to the wealthy and powerful and taken away from the less wealthy and powerful. Now, I haven't crossed this border in many years, but it used to be anyway. When you cross it, it was like night and day, just as soon as you cross, dry. And that's kind of the contrast that your book describes too. And again, the book is Nineveh by Kymone Freeman, but that, when water becomes scarce, then power is water, water is power, and that's the struggle, right? So in your book, there's one person who kind of personifies all of this on the power side, and then it seems to me one person who personifies all this on the rebellion or revolution side. Is that a fair description?
Absolutely. It's basically, if for all intents and purposes, it's basically a tale of two families. Three families, two families comprised of three people that represent the Global Water Corporation, and three people comprised of families that constitutes the resistance. And I try to humanize each character. Spent a lot of time wrestling with, what would they say? I always tell people that writers are strange people. We had to sit into rooms alone by ourselves and accurately record the voices in our heads. And then we have to try to convince other people they can hear those voices too. But as of yesterday, we got our first review back. It was a glowing review, and it's clear that other people are hearing these voices loud and clear.
Well, it's voices and it's a world, right? Because you have to create, when you're writing, you're creating an entire world. You're seeing it through the eyes of people that you've created. So you have to create the people, you have to create the world, you have to create the interactions. So, one of your characters, I think the book begins with somebody tries to accost her on the street because life has gotten so desperate that sexual attacks and trading sex for favors and sex becomes another power dynamic as it always is, I guess, but that gets amplified by the situation. So she in her world is dealing with this predator in his world, and she comes out the more powerful of the two, which kind of sets the tone for the book. But tell us a little bit about the characters, like her. I think her name was like something to do Evelyn or
her name is Evlon. It's pronounced Evlon, and it's actually no love spelled backwards.
I knew it had to be something like that. I knew this was like an anagram of something, but I didn't know what. Yeah, no love spelled backwards.
Yeah, it's some real serious symbolism by each name. As I said, Evlon's no love spelled backwards. Her father is Nabeli. Nabeli is an African tribe in South Africa. It was the last tribe to hold out against, I believe it's the Dutch that colonized South Africa. So because they was the last holdout, they got like the worst land, the worst everything. And what did they do? They made their huts these most vibrant colors, these bold colors and big broad strokes. And they was known for their beauty and celebrating their resistance. And then of course we have Bethlehem, which is the head of is basically Nibeli's chief security officer, bodyguard, if you will. And Bethlehem doesn't it's kind of like a play on a scene from what was that? The Great Debaters. Denzel Washington directorial debut. He asked one of the great debaters, "What was the irony of Bethlehem Corporation?" And in the film, he was saying that Bethlehem was the birthplace of Jesus, and Bethlehem Corporation builds bombs. So I put that in because we talk about war and peace. War and Peace. And then to represent the Global Water Corporation is headed by Nimrod. That's self-explanatory. That name is very nefarious. And then Canaan is the head of...
Nimrod was, if I'm trying to remember, Nimrod was like a hunter in the Bible or something. The name meant hunter, didn't it?
I'm not sure if it meant hunter, but he was a wicked king. Nimrod was a wicked king. I don't think he started out that way. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't start out that way, but he ended up that way. And I think the Nimrod in my book is the same way because his wife, she loved the man that she married. She didn't love the man that ran the Global Water Corporation. And their son, Sasir, rejected that life, and but he has a secret, and his secret could bring down the entire Global Water Corporation. And we learn about what that secret is during the course of the book. But the positions of good versus evil kind of change places with the characters. I wanted to show that because your friend can become your enemy, and your enemy can become your friend. And so we need to understand that these people can change positions at any time. So we should be very careful in demonization of people until proven otherwise.
Well, that's an interesting point. If we put on our activist hats for a second, right? And just think about from an activism and persuasion point of view, I've actually thought about this a lot. There are people that do really bad things, and when they do these things, they're kind of my enemy, right? But on the other hand, it could be possible that either I or somebody else might persuade them to my point of view, or there might be another situation where they would become my ally. So I think, just philosophizing for a second away from the book, and then we'll go back to it, that because I know you're an activist, very much an activist yourself, that I always try to be careful to condemn the actions, but leave a little space that, well, no, I sometimes blow that. And I was going to say leave a little space. I do get too heated against people sometimes, but I do think it's good to leave a little space to recognize that, like in my case, for example, because I work for Bernie, that Hillary person, quote unquote, might be my ally tomorrow. They might want, in their heart of hearts, the same kind of world I want. I just have to show them that it's possible. Do you know what I'm driving at?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not saying that we're supposed to be like Martin Luther King and love our enemy and turn the other cheek. I understand that we need to be open if they show us something different. If they show us something different, we should be open to that. Because in an argument, we kind of have the position that one person is right and one person is wrong. And that is the case quite often, but it's also quite possible for both parties to be wrong. Or, get this, both parties could be right. So that's the really
right.
This is truth is stranger than fiction. Fiction has to be believable, whereas reality oftentimes is not. So I love that you are open to that, but I have no problem writing certain people off. don't. George Bush has no room in my lexicon to accommodate George Bush at a family reunion. He's not welcome. It's too much blood on his hands to be able to wash it off sit at the table with me. But if someone shows you something different, you should be able to open it to appreciate that. And the characters that developed through the course of this beautiful literary piece of art did that. And I'm proud of the development. I'm proud of the arc of the story. And I'm proud that it's attacking and addressing an issue of such worldwide significance as this water crisis.
Now, are you going to do any readings around this book before we go any further? I thought I saw some announcement about you. You're at Busboys and Poets now, the one in Anacostia. I got to get back down there one of these days. But I think I saw an announcement you were going to do or did a reading there. Have you done that already?
Yeah, we've been doing a DMV book tour, all of the Busboys and Poets, which is like the activist artists water involved in the nation's capital. They got like 9 locations in the DMV from Baltimore to Virginia, and I've been to 7 of them. I'm going to the 8th one this Sunday with Kojo Nambi at 14th and B, the flagship location. That's going to be a big program for us. And then the last one will be in Columbia, Maryland, with the owner and founder, Shalal, for April the 2nd in Columbia, Maryland. Now, check this out. I was the perfect after party for my book launch yesterday and World Water Day was to have dinner with Angela Davis. And I
Really?
had the opportunity, yes, I had the opportunity to spend time with her. And she has my book, and she has promised to read it. So Dr. Angela Davis is now reading my book, and it's the greatest honor. I feel like I won an award. So next time we speak, I should have some feedback from Dr. Davis, and I look forward to seeing her on your show in the coming future.
Yeah, no, that should be really amazing. So let's, before we go, let's talk a little bit about your process, because I think every writer does the process. You're laughing now. Why?
That's because I use the Ernest Hemingway writing method. The Ernest Hemingway writing method is write drunk, edit sober, and so that has worked very well for me.
That's
in fact, I was in Cuba last month, and I had the pleasure of going to Ernest Hemingway's house. So I feel very connected to Ernest Hemingway, particularly the Old Man and the Sea book, which I took with me and I read. And I think that I have done as good of a job, if not better, than his work with his classic Old Man and the Sea. And so I hope that people will appreciate this work as much as people appreciate Ernest Hemingway.
You know, people thought, you may know this, but I bet a lot of listeners don't. People thought, and I grew up being told, that Ernest Hemingway had like some kind of paranoid personality disorder because he thought that he was being watched all the time by the FBI. And he would drive by, when he was living in Idaho, he would drive by the local courthouse. Some reporter described this. They drove by the local courthouse at like 9 o'clock at night. The light was on in an upper window. And Hemingway said, the FBI's in there spying on me. So we were all raised, well, great writer, the alcohol like rotted his brain. And, it turns out it was all true. They were tapping his phone. They were reading his letters. And when he drove by that courthouse at night, they were up at night going over the transcripts of his phone calls. So I guess I mentioned that one because it's like just an amazing, cool, and interesting fact about Ernest Hemingway, who you mentioned, but two, because, getting back to your book, the most incredible sort of preposterous descriptions of reality are sometimes more real than the reality we think we're living in. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I mean, absolutely. The fact that our media hasn't acknowledged the irony of Flint and Detroit being within proximity of the greatest fresh body of water and still having a water crisis. And that Nestle is actually commodifying that resources at bottom prices means that they're in cahoots, and we need to understand that we have enough resources for everybody on this planet. There is plenty. What we have is a problem with the distribution of those resources, and until we have a revolution of values, as Kate said, we're going to continue to have conflicts. And I need people to arm themselves with information so that they would be better equipped to deal with that. That's why they have turned pejorative, stay woke into a pejorative. You're one of those woke people. Okay, so you're one of those unconscious people. The American dream. You have to be asleep to believe it.
Right.
So we're just trying to do like Dick Gregory said and wake people up. And let me say this too, because in terms of using "stay woke" as a pejorative, I even hear pseudo liberals using that as a pejorative as well. Well, I will have you know that we're very familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but we're not as familiar with his next to his last speech, which was delivered right here in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 1968. He goes on to say in that speech that far too often people find themselves living in periods of great social change, but yet they fail to develop the new ideas, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. I submit to you that is the quintessential definition of stay woke. So I hope that everyone would hear our call here. I feel like I'm Paul Revere. The British are coming. The British are coming. But the water crisis is coming, and we need to brace ourselves and get ready to, as again, I cannot say it enough, a revolution of values, because there has to be a restructuring of the society so that we can make sure that we have an equitable distribution of the world's resources.
Well, there's one other thing. That would make a great ending point, Kymone, but there's one other thing I do have to bring up with you, and then we'll wrap up on the book. Because I don't know anybody who's used the phrase stay woke longer than you and more consistently than you. And it's years, right? It's a lot of years now. And in the last couple of years, it's become this whole issue like you described, right? And of course, I'm like you, I'm like, the answer is what? What's the alternative? No, I'm not woke. I'm asleep. It's like, of course, yeah, I get that. But I also think that the forces that control this society, the sort of liberal wing of the ruling elite, has tried to co-opt wokeness and has tried to make it just about feel good, like, I'm a bank CEO, I'm Jamie Dimon, I'll take the knee and show that I'm woke, but I'll keep all the money that my bank has stolen from black communities for 100 years. Stokely Carmichael wrote in his book that I think really popularized the phrase Black Power. You can beat up a black family on the street and everybody will be upset about it. You kick that black family out of the home in the middle of the night, nobody will know. And to me, I feel as if wokeness that some people are objecting to isn't the kind of wokeness that you represent, or that I hope I represent from my perspective, which is that of knowing all the instrumentalities that the system uses to oppress people, and not just saying, well, I'm going to be Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and I'm going to kneel on the Capitol steps with a kente cloth over my shoulder. That's fake wokeness to me. But the real wokeness says you do what you're doing, which is you challenge the system and all its manifestations, even when it makes people, liberal people too, uncomfortable to address it. I'm getting a little worked up here, but you got what I'm driving at, right?
Absolutely. My publicist always discourages me from pointing this out, but I think this really speaks to what you're saying. I urge your listeners to go and check out the speech that Barack Obama delivered in Flint, Michigan.
Yes.
Have you ever heard Obama cough during a speech? Well, he coughed 18 times in his speech in Flint, Michigan, and he asked for water twice. Okay, and had to wait for it, and then when it finally comes to him, they didn't bring him a bottle of water. Oh no, they brought him a glass of water, and he swears it's Flint water, and he takes one quick sip, and he's good. He didn't take a gulp or chug it. One sip was enough to take care of 18 coughs for him, and he was good to go. But he swears it wasn't political theater. If you can watch that with a straight face and tell me that was not an abuse of his power to raise the confidence and people in that dealing with the deprivation of drinking water in their community, a short drive from the Great Lakes, I don't know what it is. So I urge people to check that out and see for yourself and tell me what you think and stay woke.
All right. Well, we'll end it there. And again, the book, give us a full title of the book again.
It is Nineveh, A Conflict Over Water. And we pronunciate it water because we want to put some emphasis on it because it's been disrespected and taken for granted. So it's Nineveh, 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 A Conflict Over Water. And it's set in the future. It's published by Strong All Press. It's everywhere you find great books. And I hope that Amazon is the last choice that you use to patronize. But there's also at a lot of independent bookstores in the DMV, and hopefully it'll be around the nation in the days to come.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you for writing it. You did a great job. Thank you for coming on the program, and thank you for staying woke.
All right, absolutely. Stay safe, stay strong, stay woke. See y'all next time.
Yeah. We'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.